I didn't get a chance to post my June recap reading at the end of July because by the time the 31st hit my birthday, I lost track of everything. So let's talk about what I read in June. I read 2 books, 1 physical copy, 1 on my Kindle. The first is Upstairs at the White House, My Life with the First Ladies by J.B. West. And I had this on my wish list on Amazon, and a lovely TikTok friend bought it for me. And sometimes I just enjoy reading a random nonfiction, and the ones I've been gravitating towards are usually involving first ladies or things in the White House. I have no idea why. And at first I was worried this was going to be a little dry because it was less about, it wasn't going to be listed in like a bullet style format or, you know, something quirky. It was just written. So I will admit I was a little worried about the dryness factor. But let me read you what the book is about. It says, Chief Usher of the White House, J.B. West, directed the operations and maintenance of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and coordinated its daily life at the request of the president and his family. He directed state functions, planned parties, weddings and funerals, gardens and playgrounds, and extensive renovations, and, with a large staff, supervised every activity in the presidential home. For 28 years, first as assistant to the chief usher, then as chief usher, he witnessed national crisis and triumphs and interacted daily with 6 consecutive presidents and first ladies, as well as their parents, children, grandchildren, and house guests, including friends, relatives, and heads of state. Alive with anecdotes ranging from Eleanor Roosevelt's fascinating political strategies to Jackie Kennedy's tragic loss and the personal struggles of Pat Nixon, Upstairs at the White House is a rich account of a slice of American history that usually remains behind closed doors. So I was just intrigued at the angle of this book. It was not going to be focusing on presidents and their time as president and what they accomplished as presidents and as president and things like that. This was taking on the, you know, more social end of the first ladies. And what was so fascinating to see was just how the role of the first lady evolved over time. What was expected of her, what each individual first lady wanted to do and what she didn't want to do. And it was just so interesting to see just how history changed from when he began to when he left, and just what was happening in the world and how that shaped what first ladies did or did not do in terms of, you know, oh, they started, you know, charity work, and other first ladies were just like, nope, I'm just going to live here and I'm going to let my husband do his thing. And then there were some first ladies who were just right behind her husband, doing just as much as the president was in aiding him and helping decisions and influencing how the nation would go. And I have no idea how Mr. J.B. West led a personal life. He got married. He had at least 1 child, possibly 2. How? He was essentially on call 24 hours. If there was a problem in the middle of the night, he's called. And he was planning all of these events somehow while also living his life and planning the events of his life. Talk about an understanding spouse and family, because that boggles my mind. He devoted, 28 years of his life here. And it wasn't just a 9-to-5 job. He was at the mercy of the first ladies and the residential portion of life of the White House. And from what I've gathered, from what was published in here, he was very, very good at his job. And I haven't researched him personally, so I might eat my words later on. but it seemed that he was the one who you would try to emulate when you got this job. And without him, it seems like a lot of stuff would not happen. And I pity the person who took it after him, that massive undertaking, because he left shortly after Nixon was elected. He was not there when everything went down, because I was kind of hoping that would be in here. And just how that affected residential life, but it was not in here. And I will say, that brings me to, he did not write anything scandalous. There was nothing being spoken about, let's say, the Kennedys at the White House, in terms of some personal histories there. So if you're looking for juicy details, this book isn't gonna have it. And I think he did that out of respect for these families, and to remain trustworthy, because he probably witnessed a lot of things in these families that would be just gobbled up now if it were nowadays. And he is going to take that to the grave, I feel. Anyway, I read this book from May 13th to June 9th, not because it was a difficult read, but I was having some focus issues of my own. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I think this has been my only nonfiction book I've read so far this year, so it is top tier. And it was also the 9th book I read of the year. So there's that review. The 10th book of the year I read was on my Kindle, and that is Harbored Secrets by Marie F. Martin. And as usual, this was an Amazon Prime free read download that I downloaded February 5th, 2016. This is a dual timeline book taking place in 1935 and 1982. Let me double check that. I was correct on that. And it follows Bliney Platt as a child and in the 30s and then into adulthood. And this is, in a nutshell, somebody who is working through and coming to terms with their childhood trauma. And it was heavy trauma, no doubt. Bliney Platt has a younger sister and a younger brother, and after family tragedy strikes and she loses her mother and her brother, her father makes some questionable parenting decisions, and through the course of a week, this whole week changes the course of her life, and it down the line estranges her from her sister, and her father remarries, and there is so much not said and lied about or covered up that completely ruins Bliney's life and makes her unable to successfully grow as a person. It isn't until present day of 1982 when Bliney is starting to build her own house with her own bare hands does she start to come to terms with what she has learned through the course of her life, and also continues to learn things in her by now 50s. And is it a happy ending? Depends how you look at it. I will say a lot of the stuff that happened, like, it's one of those, could so much happen to one person in one family, and could heartbreak and trauma really follow someone, just bam, 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 one thing after another? Is that possible? And I mean, it is possible, but when you're reading it just sounds and feels so unbelievable. The writing is good, the characters are fully developed, the relationships between one another are individual and developed. You know, how one person interacts with another person is different than another person. Everybody, I didn't confuse anybody. I didn't go, wait, is that person that person? Everybody was fully fledged and their own human being. But if you are looking for something that is tied neatly with a bow on top, and you can close the book and know that everything turned out okay. Not for you, maybe. Everything turned out content. Everyone's content to some degree. Not really. There's wounds that are still going to fester, most likely, if you're going to think about how these characters are going to live once you end the book. It's a hard read. I read it from June 10th to June 22nd. It kept me extremely interested because it was one of those things where, like I said, one thing after another, this domino effect, and I'm like, no, it can't be. No, this can't be happening. It was that type of thing, and I gave it a 4 out of 5, and that was the 10th book I read. So that recaps everything I read in June. So before you know it, I'll be posting about July. So until next time, happy reading. Bye.